Welcome to the Dare to Begin Small and Mighty podcast, episode number 34. Have you ever been positivity bullied? Have you had negative thoughts and get stuck in the negative spiral where you just can't seem to get out? And then you have someone say, stop thinking about all those things because you're only bringing in more of what you don't want? If that's been you, and my hand is up for sure, then I'm excited to share today's episode with you. I'm going to give you some quick tips on how to change it. Let's get to it. I spent years building my interior design business trying to do all the things. The marketing, the networking, the free content, spending thousands of dollars on training and education, only to see minimal growth. After years of frustration, I finally started to ask, what am I missing? I had the systems in place for powerful growth. I had amazing clients. I had determination, drive, and commitment to spare. And yet, I wasn't seeing the success I desired. What if business is not about the doing? What if building a powerful business requires both powerful systems and something else, something deeper? I'm Amy Van Meel, and I'm on a journey to discover that something else. If you are ready to build a powerful business and do it knowing that your success is inevitable, join me as I share both the powerful systems I know work and my lessons and revelations as I discover that something deeper. Welcome, Changemaker, to the Dare to Begin Small and Mighty podcast. Hey there, Changemakers. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of the Dare to Begin Small and Mighty podcast. I'm excited that you're here with me today. And I want to talk about something today. I'm going to jump right into it. I want to talk about something today that has been rumbling around in my mind a little bit. And I know that you've experienced this because every single human being on the planet experiences this. And what I'm talking about today is negative thoughts. So, it's so interesting. I knew already a week ago that this is probably going to be the topic that was going to be the next podcast episode. And if you think that I could write down some kind of coherent set of notes for me to work with, well, you'd be wrong because I have notes written down, and normally I like to have a bit of a structure for my podcast episodes. But the last few have been what I would just call podcast episodes in flow. They've just been channeling through as I share them with you. Now, here's the really funny thing. Last week's podcast episode I wanted to listen to it because you may have noticed that there's a new intro that's on the podcast. There's a new extro that I have on the podcasts, and I've changed the format up a tiny bit, and I wanted to hear how it sounded and make sure that the audio quality was coming through well. And so last week, the podcast episode from last week, and this might sound crazy, I don't know. I don't tend to often re-listen to the podcast episodes because I listen to them when I'm in the edits. I listen to them when I'm actually recording them. But last week I listened through the episode and there was moments where I had some deep insight from words that I had said on the episode. So I thought that was kind of cool. So I would encourage you, if you are a podcaster as well, that it might be interesting for you every now and again to go back and listen to your own podcast episode and be like, I wonder what was behind that. So here's what I want to talk about when it comes to negative thoughts. I have, as long as I have been alive, and I'm sure you have the same thing, have had negative thoughts. And there's been all variety of thoughts and habits and patterns and ideas of how to deal with negative thoughts. So I think the one thing that most everybody can agree on is that you don't want to sit in them. You don't want to just dwell in the negative thoughts. But here's what I noticed happening a few years ago. What I have seen as a rise in the last few years is what I call positivity bullying. So I had a couple years ago, and I don't remember if I shared this experience earlier on a podcast episode, but I was really struggling. Emotionally, I was really struggling. It was an enormous effort just to get out of bed and to, try to keep going. Things were not going the way I wanted them to in my life and in my business, and I was really struggling. And I went to a networking event or a business education event in the city. And I met with a business owner there that I had become friends with over the years. And I recall we were walking through the trade show floor and he asked me how I was. And I said, I'm okay. And I don't know if I'll ever forget this. He turned to me and said, "What do you mean you're just okay? You should be better than okay. You have a business that you love and you have this and you have a great guy and you have blah, 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 blah." And his response made me feel lower than dirt. It was at the beginning of the day, so I needed to still somehow, pull my chin up and get through. And all I wanted to do, I just wished there would be a hole that would open up in that concrete floor so I could disappear and not have to deal with it. It was such a gargantuan effort just to get there, and then to be, berated with this right away was really hard on me. And what I noticed from that, and I noticed it before as well, but I noticed I call it it's not okay to not be okay. And I've spoken out about this in the past on different Facebook posts and different things. But what I want to take a small diversion here to discuss is that it's okay and it's totally normal to not feel okay all the time. And can we just pinky swear, you and I right now, make an agreement that if someone says to you that they're okay, that's not necessarily an alarm bell of, well, what's going on and you should be so grateful and look at how amazing your life is, but maybe it's just an indicator to say okay, you know what? Maybe today they are just okay. I'm sure that you've had days where you've woken up and you're like, I'm not in a bad mood, not in a great mood, I am today. That's all I have today. And so if somebody asks you how you are and you say, well, I'm okay, it's because you don't feel, super positive or super excited or whatever. But, I think we need to be okay with the fact that sometimes we're just okay. But now here's what I want to talk about when it comes to negative thoughts. So, like I said, we can all agree that we don't want to be dwelling in negative thoughts. But like I said, I've noticed a lot of what's been happening has been this positivity bullying, that it seems as if as you do some personal growth and you become more, call it enlightened, that there's a higher expectation that you're not going to be feeling down, that it's not okay for you to feel, depressed or sad or angry or annoyed or frustrated, that somehow you need to just have this magical trampoline that you have that feeling and then boom, it's okay, life is okay. I have all these amazing things and da 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 da. One of the things I hated since I can remember, because I remember we used to get told this as kids, was somebody's always worse off than you. Just remember, you think you have it so bad, but somebody else always has it worse than you, which not only made me feel bad about the person who was worse, it made me feel even worse about the fact that I was feeling terrible. And here I was feeling like, who was I to feel terrible when I had all these amazing things? And so instead of shifting the perspective, and I know some people will use this as a perspective shift, and if it works for you, fantastic. But for me, it just ended up being an added weight to just add into that negative thought. So now not only was I feeling bad or down or whatever, now I was on top of that feeling bad about feeling bad, because I was this ungrateful, spoiled brat, or however you want to look at it, that, here I'm feeling sad, and meanwhile there's kids across the world that are going to bed with no food. Right? And so that thought never served me. And then I noticed I've been working with a coach, and my coach has been really fantastic. But one of the things that I did notice that just came up last week, and this is why I wanted to record this podcast episode. I listen to James Wedmore quite frequently. I listen to Brooke Castillo from the Life Coach School quite frequently. And I noticed that both of them said at some point that our job as human beings is not to be happy all the time. That really, we can aspire for being sort of 50-50, right? So we're happy 50% of the time and we're not happy 50% of the time. Now, not happy does not have to mean we're angry, we're frustrated, we feel super depressed. Not happy could just be a day that you wake up and you're just feeling okay. But what I noticed with my coach, and I understand in part why she was bringing this up, it is my tendency to dwell. In the past, it would be my tendency to dwell. So I've been paying attention to Jim Fortin as well lately, and he has a fascinating way of describing our thoughts. And he talks about our thoughts, that we are not our thoughts, that our thoughts are an illusion. talk about a mind bender. But one of the things that he said that I keep reminding myself of now, we are not our thoughts. We are the thinker of our thoughts. And so what would happen for me is that I would have a negative thought and my brain would latch onto it like cocaine and would perpetuate that thought. And it would end up, I would turn into this gigantic spiral where I would spiral down into darker and darker and darker thoughts. And so what my coach was trying to say to me, stop thinking about them because what you're focusing on will manifest. And so when I was going into these, down spirals, she's like, stop doing that. Now, I understand now, having had some time to think about it as the thinker of my thoughts. But at the time, what it felt like was a repetition of that positivity bullying. Stop it. You need to think happy thoughts. Whereas I'm going, but I don't feel happy right now. And to try to put a Band-Aid over top of it and say, well, everything's great and look how wonderful my life is, seems really inauthentic and it doesn't stick. And in the meantime, I could be saying that out into the world, but in my mind, it's totally a different thing. So as I began thinking about being the thinker of my thoughts, and I would encourage you, I know Jim Fortin has a podcast, I don't know what it's called. He has a couple episodes where he interviewed on James Wedmore's podcast, so I would definitely recommend you check out those ones, which is where I first learned about Jim Fortin. I didn't know about him before. But as I began to think about being the thinker of my thoughts, what I've noticed the last while, as I've been practicing this and going, okay, so I am not my thoughts, I'm the thinker of my thoughts. So if I'm the thinker of my thoughts, what does that mean? And so now what I do, and I noticed this, and the reason I share this today specifically is because this was literally in my head last night. And I woke up in the middle of the night from a bad dream and immediately was into this like negative spiral of thoughts. And even then, because I've been training myself to pay attention to it, I went, whoa, 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 whoa. We need to just stop for a second. If I am the thinker of my thoughts, then I get to choose what I think about. And I get to discard the things that I don't want to think about. So I don't know if this is anybody else. Probably, there's 8 billion of us. I'm sure somebody else on the planet has the same tendency that I do. So I never have to go to a horror movie or a thriller or anything because being in my brain is more than enough horror and thriller that I possibly could have. My imagination is so powerful, and I wonder often, I'm like, okay, if imagination is so powerful, could it think about things like, happy things instead of thinking about the worst possible case scenario? I will go from like getting a knife out of the kitchen drawer to make dinner, and in 30 seconds or less, my brain has gone from, okay, here's the knife. Oh my gosh, what happens if I drop this on my foot? Or what happened if like my guy suddenly turned around and it went through his back? Or, some guy broke in, and then how would I defend myself? And like, that's in like 30 seconds. It's crazy how fast my brain moves through those things. And then I would stop and go, where did that come from? Because it's not like I'd ever had a traumatic experience which would have trained my brain to go into that. It just seemed to be what I've learned. So now as recognizing myself as the thinker of my thoughts, what I've begun to realize is that thoughts are like a freight train. They sort of come and go regularly, and if you're not paying attention, they just carry on. But like a freight train where it actually takes relatively small amount of effort to start a freight train. I'm not talking about starting it moving, but I'm talking about the pure mechanics of it, that it's not somebody pushing a train. It's, they flip a few switches and that starts the engines going. So from a human perspective, there's not a lot of effort required in order to start the train, but there is an enormous amount of effort required if that train gets out of hand. So like a freight train, your thoughts they may come in and they may start very easily and very innocently. It might just be sort of something that's like, oh my goodness, okay, we're out of milk and I need to go get milk. Oh, but geez, I only have $20 left in my bank account. How am I going to pay for milk? And oh my gosh, I still have that car payment that comes out. And oh, I forgot that internet payment or the insurance payment is coming up. And oh my goodness, and I need to make sure that there's money on the credit card so I can make that insurance payment. And now what am I going to do? And how am I going to bring this money in? And where is it going to come from? And oh my God, and I'm just this total failure. And like that's how it starts. But the thought that started it was, oh, we need to go get some milk. So it seems like a really innocuous, there's nothing much to it. It's just and there's no emotion around it. We just need milk. It's a state of fact, right? Okay, we have no milk in the fridge or we're low. It's time to go get some milk. But that small thing, it's like throwing the switch on a train. It all of a sudden starts progressing. And if you're not paying attention, if you're in the moment of just being the thought versus being the thinker of your thought, then it just goes out of hand. And like a freight train, if a freight train continues to speed up and is not checked at some point, so trains can be totally safe. They operate on a fixed track. So, they're not going to jump out of the way all of a sudden. If they are operated safely, they will continue moving in the direction of which they should. But it's when they get out of control, when they get past the point of there's someone in charge of them, that they all of a sudden become these enormous threats. I mean, if you think about a freight train, think about how much weight and momentum there is in those, right? So our thoughts are very similar that way, that they may start very simply, but if we don't recognize that we're the thinker of our thoughts and we're not this hapless, being that just happens to suddenly be at the mercy of our thoughts, then what tends to happen is that our thoughts become these freight trains that just keep bullying us over and over and over again. I heard this really fascinating, and I can't remember her last name, but it was Christy something, and I believe she was on James Wedmore's podcast as well. Like I said, I listened to him a lot. And she shared a story in her interview about her son, that when he was 4 years old, she was talking about the law of attraction and about negative thoughts and how like attracts like. And her son at 4 years old said to her something like, "It's like I have these bad soldiers in my head. And the bad soldiers go out and they get more bad soldiers." And she said, "Well, yeah, that's basically the law of attraction. That's what you're thinking about expands." Now, here's the turning point for me. And I share this with you, trusting that whoever needs to hear this is going to hear this. Because if I just hear that, like you have a negative thought and don't dwell on it because it's going to create more negative thoughts, then you feel very much at the mercy of your thoughts of, well, whatever comes up, you're either in like things are good and things are okay and okay, away we go, or things are bad and you need to be in full battle mode. You need to be focused on like, oh, I need to stop this. I need to fix this. I need to think about something else. And so you're arguing against yourself, which is freaking exhausting, let me just say. So I thought about this bad soldiers, and I thought about the negative thoughts and being the thinker of our thoughts. And suddenly it came to mind. I'm sure this was in The Secret, and I've heard different people talk about this when it comes to our thoughts. And they always use this example in relation to our positive thoughts, in relation to it takes time to manifest things. So the example is that when you think about an elephant doesn't just immediately appear in your living room, right? And so they talk about the fact that there is a time delay on the things that you want, partly to maybe make sure that that is something that you really want, partly because the universe needs to conspire to move things into shape, and that might take a couple of hours or it might take a couple of years. But I've only ever heard about that example used for positive thoughts, to remind us as we're focusing on manifesting something in that we want to have, that it may take some time. Now, here's where I want to go with this, because this is where it all came together for me. And I can remember I was walking through my living room, as I remember it clearly in my mind. If it takes a moment for our positive thoughts to manifest something, if it takes some time for the energy to generate, to get out there into the universe and say, this is what I really want, then by the same token, our negative thoughts would operate the same way. So if you are standing in the kitchen and you pick up a knife and all of a sudden you have all these horrific thoughts of like fears or whatever, they aren't going to immediately come to pass just because you thought about them. And the thing that I've noticed, and I think that lots of people notice, is that, it's not okay to have bad thoughts. It's not okay to have negative or down or adverse thoughts, that we need to focus on being in the happy. But, oh, by the way, while you're in the happy, be patient because it takes time for those to come about. I think it's also important for us to remember that in the negative thoughts, that they aren't going to come to pass right away. And so what I know for myself is that I have a scary thought or a down thought or some kind of, below the line thought. And then immediately I'm terrified that because I've thought about that now it's going to come to pass. Oh my God, the plane's going to crash because I just thought about it. And now it's like, of course it's going to happen to me. I'm just so unlucky that way, and away we go. And so what we're doing, it's funny and it's insidious in a way, in our effort to not have that negative thoughts and to check ourselves in that negative thought and to not dwell in it. What we actually end up doing is perpetuating that thought, because now not only are we having whatever the negative thought is, now we're beating ourselves up over having that negative thought, and oh my God, like we just need to think about something else and stop thinking about this. And if you think about an elephant does not immediately appear in your living room. So by the same token, if you thought about your car having a massive accident while you're driving down the highway, it does not immediately turn into a massive accident, right? There's a time delay. Now, here's where this time delay is hugely to our benefit. We are the thinker of our thoughts. Our thoughts do not control us. They do not own us. We are the thinker of our thoughts. If there's a time delay, then it actually gives us a moment to be able to pull back and have a moment and take a little look at this. So this is what I've been practicing. Sometimes it takes a little longer to pay attention to than others. So the middle of the night, of course, like I woke up from this dream and your brain's just sort of like, what the heck? But as soon as I recognized what was happening, that I was on this negative trajectory, I went, whoa, hang on a minute. I'm the thinker of my thoughts. So if I'm the thinker of my thoughts, I could probably choose to think about something different. So let's just look at this thought that I'm having. So the dream was something about freaking out, was having a panic attack about something. I don't remember what it was, but it was related to something being very disorganized. I'm a very organized person, so you might be like, really? But anyway, that was the vague recollection that I have, is that there was something that was just going sideways and I was totally freaking out. And so as soon as I recognized, when I was alert that this is what was happening, I went, whoa, okay, hang on just a second. So the thought that I am having is that, this was some horrible situation and it's totally making me freak out and there's all this negativity. So I see that thought, but as the thinker of my thoughts, I could choose to continue on that thought pattern and see where it goes and end up totally freaked out, or I could just release the thought, dismiss it, put it back into the ether and say, you know what, I don't need this one anymore. And I could think about something different. And I know that sounds so ridiculously easy, you probably want to punch me in the face. I totally get it. I've been there. I've heard people talk about, that we choose our thoughts and it's not, we shouldn't be getting loaded down. And I've wanted to punch them in the face and be like, well, why don't you come spend a few hours in my head and we'll see how easy it is. And I will say this, it's not easy, but like anything, it just takes practice. And so here's where it's important. I want to remind you to be gentle with yourself as you're going through this. I am 100% guilty of this, that I know I learn things quickly and I get annoyed with myself if it takes me more than one go to pick something up. I know that's ridiculous, but that's where my brain goes. And if it's something that's especially hard, if it takes me, a couple of times and then I might still make a small mistake. Like let's say I'm not a pilot, but let's say I was learning how to fly. Let's say I had the landing perfect and I had the takeoff perfect and I was doing everything perfect, but I missed one small thing. Maybe I didn't check into the tower or I hadn't checked this gauge or something. If that got pointed out to me, what my habitual train of thought would be to just berate myself. I can't believe you forgot that. Like, Amy, you know better. That's what that thought would be in my mind first. What I am training myself and practicing now is to just go, oh, isn't that interesting that I forgot about that? Okay, it's not the end of the world. The plane's still flying. We're still okay. Everybody's healthy and happy and fine. And it's just a reminder to say, all right, we need to pay attention to that thing as well. I was focused on these other things and I just simply forgot about it. It's not the end of the world. It's a moment for you to be able to correct and to add that back into your memory bank. And I will say this, anytime I've been learning something new, If there's something that I have forgotten or a mistake that I made, you can bet your ass that I would only ever make that mistake once. If it's something really significant that I'm like, oh my gosh, and it's not about putting power into the self berating, but it puts that memory in place of, oh, okay, you know what? I remember this because I remember getting, reminded or told that this wasn't correct. And I really didn't like that situation. So I'm not going to do that again. Right? Do you follow? So, what we need to do as we're practicing being the thinker of our thoughts, I would remind you to be gentle on yourself while you're figuring it out. So, Zumba is a perfect example, and I love Zumba. I have so much fun doing it. And I've mentioned this before that when I first went to Zumba, when I first started, I was terrible. Now I'm getting better, but by no means am I really good at it. There's some dances that I catch most of the steps, and there's some dances that I just look like someone who's, just took a muscle relaxant and can't quite figure out what her arms and legs are doing. But here's the really cool thing about Zumba. I went in knowing that I wouldn't have a clue, and I'm not a dancer. I've never taken any kind of dancing training, and so I love to dance. I love to feel my body move, which is one of the reasons why I've always been so active in my life. But there's salsa, and there's so many different kinds of dance that are just, they move so fast and your feet move so fast. And I feel like there's a huge lag between my brain and my feet. Now, here's what's really cool. This is what I love about Zumba. It's a phenomenal exercise for you to practice your mental state. And here's what I mean. If I am learning a new dance or learning a new step and my thought pattern goes, well, I can't do that. Oh, I can't do that. Oh man, I so would like to do that, but I just can't do that. Inevitably, I can't do that. My feet they just won't work the way that I see, or my hips, they won't work the way I see the instructor doing it. So I notice this happening, and after a while, I'm like, "Ooh, this might be a really cool way to do an experiment." So the experiment that I do, and I do this almost every class. If I notice that pattern come up, oh, I can't do that. Oh, I just can't do that. Like I don't have the training, and I don't have this, and da 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 da. I'll recognize that as the thinker of my thoughts. I recognize that come in, and then I approach it as an experiment. What if I could? What if I didn't think about the fact that I couldn't do that? And what if I just allowed it to be like, I'm just going to watch and not throw a whole bunch of thought patterns on top of it. And I'm just going to see what comes out of it from there. And inevitably, somehow, through what I think of as sheer magic, I would be able to do a step or very similar to it. It may not be perfect and it may not look as good as them, and I don't care. But what was interesting to me is that all of a sudden I could do it. And I'm like, well, isn't that interesting? And so when I talk about being the thinker of our thoughts, and like I said, Jim Fortin, I would highly recommend that you check him out. And he's much more the expert than I am. So I'm sharing with you what I'm learning. But if I look at myself as the thinker of my thoughts, suddenly I'm not at the mercy of my thoughts anymore. And then when I add into that the layer of that, things don't manifest immediately. So if I'm having a negative thought, I don't need to beat myself up about that having that negative thought. I do want to be aware that I'm not dwelling in it, because then it's just like pouring fuel into the fuel tank of the negative thought. You're just giving it all this extra energy for it to keep perpetuating. But if I recognize that there's a thought that feels down or feels off, I can remind myself, wait a minute, I'm the thinker of my thoughts. And as the thinker of my thoughts, I get to choose what I'm thinking about. So at this moment, I'm choosing to think about this, whatever this, don't have enough money to pay my bills, or I don't want to hit the car in front of me, or the guy beside me is driving like an idiot, or whatever. As the thinker of my thoughts, I can then go, isn't that interesting that is what came up? Okay. Well, I could choose to continue on that thought, or I could choose to just let it go. And what else could I think about? And the really beautiful thing, what I love about that, it's not a shift to say, okay, I have to go think about something positive. Just think about something happy so that I can focus on being happy. I don't come at it from that perspective, like, oh, I just got to be happy. I literally say, well, if I'm the thinker of my thoughts, I can choose to think about this, or I could choose to think about something else. So what else could I think about? And all of a sudden, you've taken the control back, you've taken your power back, and you get to choose what you think about. So if you want to sit there and be angry, and I have moments, I know I will have these, I'm sure, as long as I live, that I'm driving and somebody's being a total knucklehead, and I'm, cursing at them, and I realize, well, this person is really taking, like, in charge of my happiness right now, and I will literally say out loud, I know that this is not a positive thing, and I don't freaking care. Right now, I just want to be angry because that person's being a douchebag. But what's good about that is not that I've given myself permission to wallow, but that I recognize this doesn't feel great. This person's really pissing me off, but it also isn't who I am. And because I've given myself grace to feel that emotion and just sit there and be like, I'm fucking pissed at this person, pardon my French, and just be like, okay, this is how I feel. When the person inevitably takes an exit or leaves, or I get away from them, what have you, I feel calmer. Versus what I used to do, and this is again where I come back to the idea of the positivity bullying. Somebody's being a total dick around you in traffic and is driving you crazy. And I remember a coach from years ago who would say, if you get angry because that person is, doing that, they're in charge of your happiness. And he would sing-song it. This person's in charge of your happiness, and you just gave all your power away. And I understand in a way the point he was trying to make, but on the other hand, I'm like, well, that is not helping, because even though you recognize that, for me, it was just an additional giving my power away. Whereas now, if I look at it and go, I'm annoyed with this person, and I recognize that I'm annoyed with this person, and I recognize that I have a choice to either continue to be annoyed with this person or to let it go. And for the next 30 seconds, I'm just going to be annoyed with this person because he keeps doing stupid things in traffic. Then once I move past him, there might be a thought of like, what a jerk. But it doesn't perpetuate. I don't hit the next light and then take it out on the next person where I end up cutting somebody else off, whether I recognize that I am or I'm not aware of it. Or I come home and I take it out on my guy because, this idiot in traffic was just such a douchebag, and now you're not, wanting to listen to me or whatever. I'm not taking it out on the next because I gave myself that time to just like, I'm going to feel this emotion 100% right now, because I know that I can, when I finish feeling that emotion, I can just set it aside. So I would encourage you, the same with the thinker of your thoughts. And Jim Fortin talks about this, and this is a mastery I aspire to work myself towards, that he's relatively positive. And when I say positive, he's not bubbly all the time. If you've heard Jim Fortin speak, he doesn't sound like the bubbly person. He's pretty level. But what he said to James Wedmore is that he pays attention to how he's feeling, because if he feels down or angry or, depressed or whatever else, when there's below the line thoughts, he has now trained himself to see that as sort of like I don't want to say alarm. That's the wrong word, but like someone just sort of gave you a nudge in the shoulder and said, hey, what are you thinking about there? And so he's trained himself to recognize, oh, I don't feel so great right now. Oh, well, I'm the thinker of my thoughts, and my thoughts will eventually feed into my emotions. So what am I thinking about right now? And uses it as the opportunity to observe where he's coming from or what he's thinking about. And then again, because the beauty of it is, because when we take away the idea that this negative thought we're thinking about is going to manifest right away, in partnership with the idea that we are the thinker of our thoughts, what suddenly happens, and this is so beautiful, is that it all of a sudden opens up this space. It's kind of like this cosmic time warp where you just sort of open up the space to go, oh, okay, so I'm not, subject to my emotion or subject to my thoughts. And this negative thought that I'm having right now is not going to instantly manifest into my reality. And so because there's a bit of a time lag between what I'm thinking about what shows up into my life, I don't want to dwell on that, because if I continue staying in this negative thought cycle, it is going to eventually manifest. But the other thing is, because there's a time lag and I'm the thinker of my thoughts, I can actually look at it and observe it and then go, okay, so I could continue thinking this, or I could think about something different. And what would that look like? And the beauty of our brains is that it will be like, we're not thinking about that anymore. All right, well, hang on, let me go see what else we can think about. And if the next thing that you think about is another bad thing or negative thing, then again, you can remind yourself, oh, wait a minute. Okay, I'm the thinker of my thoughts. So I'm thinking about this right now, but this thought is probably not serving me. So I'm going to choose to let this thought go and just, if you mentally think about, I think about like mentally putting my hand in my mind and plucking the thought out and just sort of like releasing it into the air. You know how like if you have a dandelion fluff on your sleeve and you just pick it off and you just let it go and the wind takes it away, kind of the same idea. You don't need to think I'm throwing it away or burning it up or blowing it up or whatever. Just, oh, you know what, this is not serving me. I'm just gonna let it go, like a piece of lint or a piece of dandelion that's stuck to your sweater that just doesn't need to be there. And then you can choose to think about the next thing. And again, to not beat yourself up if you are in that low space. Now, here's the thing that I love. I'm going to talk about this and then we'll wrap it up. Is that as you practice this, being the thinker of your thoughts and being the observer of your thoughts and being able to go, oh, isn't that interesting? I'm having that thought right now. Okay. So I can keep thinking about this or I can let it go. The first few times it feels weird. And let me tell you, if I'm really like thinking through something deep, so if I'm doing deep work, whether it's homework, I took some live training from Jim Fortin last week and he had some homework associated with it, or I learned deep lessons from James Wedmore or whoever, then I will think out loud. Now I have the luxury of being at home by myself, so I can talk and holler all I want to, but I will talk through it. So I'll stop and go, whoa, isn't that interesting? This literally out loud. Oh, I'm having this thought right now. Huh, okay. So I can continue having this thought, or, what else could I think about? And this is fantastic if you're doing deep work where you have deep questions. So often if you have deep questions, this is a question that is still hanging me up a little bit, but I feel like I'm getting closer to understanding the answer is, what is it that I really want? And the immediate thing, even now, just saying that, I can hear it immediately pop up into my head is, I don't know what I want. Well, I don't know, I talked about this several episodes ago, is an immediate stopper for your brain. I don't know tells your brain, there's no answer in here and there's no need to keep looking. So what I do is I give voice to that thought. So I'll ask this question out loud. What is it that I want? And I can hear that. So I'll say, okay, right now the thought that comes up is that I don't know what I want. All right, so I can dwell on that and I can just let go, but then I still don't have an answer to the question. So what if I just set the I don't know aside for a moment? And what if I did know? What if I could have a conversation with my highest self about it? What if I could just, look for other options around it? Something that was really cool that I did, one of the questions in the homework that Jim Fortin gave us a couple weeks ago was, what are your gifts? And right away, my brain's like, well, I don't know what my gifts are. And I said, well, what if I, what would I see for evidence of a gift? And all of a sudden, my brain, instead of being stuck in this, I don't know, it goes to work to go, oh, we're looking for evidence. All right, hang on. Let me go search the file folders. I have this vision of this little guy like searching the file folders. Gifts. Okay. You're a great baker. That's a gift. And I have evidence of that because when I do bake things, cakes, cookies, other kinds of sweets, everybody likes it. And they tell me, wow, Amy, we can't get over how good you are and how delicious the things are that you make. You're a great baker. So I have evidence of that gift. Then all of a sudden my brain goes, oh, okay, what other gifts do we have? What other evidence do we have of gifts that we have? Well, we're creative. Well, how do we know that we're creative? Where's the evidence of that? And like I said, I'm an interior designer, which you might think, well, obviously you're creative, Amy, but there's many times that I have doubted that. So my brain now goes to work to look for evidence of the fact that I am creative. So what does that evidence look like? Well, I could look at, remember that project that we did that we had that weird situation with the door and we couldn't figure out what to do? The client was really stuck. And you came up with this idea to build a custom door and do it like this. And they love it. And everybody that's come to see their home since loves it. That's an example of creativity. Okay, I've got evidence there. well, what other evidence do I have then of being creative? And so then my brain goes to work to supply the answer. But if I don't think of myself as the thinker of my thoughts, if I allow myself to be subject to the first thing that comes up and don't take a moment and say, well, hang on a second, let's observe this and open myself up to the opportunity to try different things and test out some different answers in my mind, then I wouldn't get there, right? It would be an enormous struggle. It would feel like I'm, pushing a lead ball uphill going, oh my God, like just tell me what my gifts are so I can answer this question so I can go on to the next one. Whereas if I focus on it of like, okay, well, if I have gifts, then I would have evidence of those gifts. So where's the evidence? Let's look for the evidence. And your brain is like this giant supercomputer. It just wants to give you an answer. And that's why sometimes the rote answer of I don't know or I can't it's so easy for our brain, because what it does is it shuts down all responsibility of our brain. Our brain can say, all right, gave you an answer. I'm washing my hands of this situation. Let's go on to the next thing. But it hasn't actually served you in the sense of, well, now you're not even going to try, right? If I think about in Zumba class, well, I can't do that, then my body won't even bother trying. Whereas if I release that and go, what if I could? What if I could just let this thought go for a minute and just allow my eyes to observe and allow my body to intuitively do what I see happening? Could I do it then? And almost every single time I can do it then. And so I would encourage you to practice small experiments like that. And whether you're doing Zumba or not, it's not really the point. But if you see something that you would like to do and your immediate thought is, well, I can't do this. And, you have the whole barrage of reasons why you can't, like I broke my leg or have whatever, spina bifida or all these different things. Like your brain comes up with all kinds of stories that we tell ourselves to keep ourselves where we are in the safe zone. If you're just like, well, isn't that funny that thought comes up? But I'm the thinker of my thoughts. And as the thinker of my thoughts, I could choose what I think about. So instead of thinking that I can't do that, what if I simply thought about, well, what if I could? What if I could allow my body and my brain to just observe that action and try to emulate it? You'll be so amazed and so impressed with what you come up with and what all of a sudden you'll be able to do. You're going to pee your pants. You'll be totally shocked. So that's what I want to talk about today. And just to remind you, negative thoughts are not bad. They are not things to be beating yourself up about, and they are normal. Every freaking human being on the planet, I don't care who you are, has negative thoughts. It's part of being human. The thing that I find in kind of a weird, cruel, but kind of interesting way is that it's somehow so much easier to engage in negative thoughts, but way less easy to engage in positive thoughts. And that's something that I'm super curious. If I were a researcher, that would be the thing that I would research. But I'm fascinated by that idea that somehow it's much easier to just, be in the things that don't serve us than it is to be in the things that do serve us. And why are we made that way? I'm sure that's a question I won't get answered until I am onto the next plane. But I would encourage you, don't beat yourself up about having negative thoughts, but also don't wallow in them. So bring awareness to the fact that you're having a negative thought. Remember, you are the thinker of your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. You are the thinker of your thoughts. So the next time that something comes up, and you'll notice it. You'll notice it because you'll all of a sudden you'll feel the not nice feelings, right? All of a sudden you find yourself feeling angry or upset or annoyed or frustrated or depressed or whatever it is. That's a cue to you to go, oh, okay, hang on just a second. All right, there's a thought behind this. So what am I thinking right now? And as soon as you bring that awareness to it, you'll be fascinated by what you'll learn about yourself. All right, that's all I have for you today. I know it's a loaded topic, and I trust that you got a ton of really powerful information and knowledge out of this. I would encourage you to practice it and again, be gentle with yourself, not to the point of letting yourself off the hook. I remember when I was in high school, this was such a fascinating example of exactly what I'm about to say. that, as women, obviously we go through our monthly cycles. And I said to my guy all the time, you have no idea how lucky you have it, because your emotions stay relatively stable unless you have an experience that shows up. As women, we could be totally fine last night, had a great day yesterday, went to bed, felt amazing, wake up the next day and want to murder a village. And no idea where it came from, because, we slept fine and everything's fine. Nothing in our reality seems to have changed. And yet just angry. And it used to really throw me for a loop. And now I'm like, oh, great. All right. It's just my double X chromosomes going to work, right? So now I understand it. But I remember when I was in high school, there was the girl who said something along the lines of, well, I'm feeling really bitchy today. And that's okay, because you know what? I'm a girl and I feel bitchy. And so I'm just going to be bitchy today. And you're just going to have to deal with it. And I remember that even then thinking, all right, well, just because you don't feel 100% doesn't mean that you need to take it out on everybody else. So what I'm saying is, it's okay to have the negative thoughts or the dark thoughts or whatever else, but don't wallow in them, and don't give yourself permission to just sort of be in them. All right? So it's not about beating yourself up, but it is about holding yourself accountable to say, all right, okay, this is interesting. It's up to me to decide what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling, and the rest of the world be damned. It is my job to take care of me. That's huge. When you can start to take responsibility in all avenues of your life, you will be amazed. If you love this episode, I would love it if you would share it out, do a screenshot and share it on Instagram and tag me in it, I Dare to Begin. Otherwise, I'm so looking forward to catching you on the next episode. And one more last shout out before we go. I would love it if you would leave me a review on iTunes. So find me in the Apple Podcasts and leave a review. 5 stars would be amazing. Leave a comment if you can. And I'd love to know what's good and help other people find the podcast as well. All right. With that, I wish you a fantastic day and remind you, you're the thinker of your thoughts, baby. You can do this. Are you tired of figuring it out all on your own? Of sitting in overwhelm, knowing that you're not moving forward, but having no idea where or how to start? Are you ready to learn effective, profit-supporting strategies for your business so that you can finally earn the money you desire and step into the freedom that you're working so hard to create? If so, I invite you to join me inside the Launchpad. You'll get instant access to free training designed to meet you where you are right now and propel you forward toward the dream that you hold in your mind. It's time to make a powerful move toward your future. Time to step up and serve the people who desperately need your help. Let's not keep them waiting any longer. Today is the day. Join the Launchpad now. Just go to daretobegin.net/the Launchpad and sign up. Your success is inevitable. Now, let's launch it.